is the twin party of US capitalism. Always has been, and as far as I'm concerned, always will be. I don't believe there's a reform strategy for the Democratic Party. Just to give you two statistics which I think will help do that. First of all, Obama's election campaign. There's a lot made, and quite rightly, of the millions of pounds, of dollars, that ordinary Americans have given to Obama. What's not told is that 69% of Obama's money came from big business. He's hooked into big business. He's part of a machine that works in favour of certain big sections of American capitalism. And they switched their money. In fact, he got the same amount of money from Lehman Brothers as McCain did, funny enough, just before they went bankrupt. It's quite an amazing bet on the same. It's a great betting system. You give someone half their money, and you give someone the other half of your money, and whoever wins, you're quids in. It's absolutely a marvellous system, and that's how it absolutely works. There's a second thing that I think we have to say about the Democratic Party. It really, from being a party of the southern ruling class of America, in the 30s it transformed itself by being part of, particularly Roosevelt, about the New Deal, and incorporated the sections of the trade union movement. So today, 91% of American trade unions give to the Democratic Party. About 16% of their funding altogether in the last 5 years, but they're able to absorb that movement, just as they did the black movement in the 60s, as they did the women and gay movement in the late 60s. Absorb them, but continue to defend capitalism and work in the same way. And therefore you have a party that is openly supportive of capitalism, and Obama is not separate from that and doesn't claim to be in any of the books that he writes about and talks about. So again, you see this. Will he deliver? And the contradiction is there's huge expectations coupled with the real reality of what kind of organisation and party he belongs to. If you want to know the truth about that, look at the Washington Post. This is what it said last week. As each day passes since his election victory, Obama's foreign policy statements have become more and more hawkish. Look at his appointments. Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State. Did anyone vote for that? I thought they voted against Hillary Clinton being the President of America as a Republican and the Democratic Party. They didn't vote for him to become the second head honcho of the party. Robert Gates, he's George Bush's Secretary of Defence, and he's going to be Obama's Secretary of Defence. All those people wanted to end the war in Iraq and Afghanistan didn't vote for that. Jim Jones, National Security Advisor, Republican right-wing lunatic, from what I've read on the blogs about him and on his own thing. Complete gung-ho Rambo. Says Rambo's one of his favourite films. My God, what are we doing here? Best friend of John McCain. I mean, I think there's a serious problem over this. And therefore, what Obama's doing is Obama is shifting over the question of Iraq, not because it's a break with international policy of America. Actually, sections of the ruling class of America have been arguing for a long time to withdraw out of Iraq because it's making the situation worse and their profits are becoming worse. Exxon had a very interesting paper they did for the Financial Times about a year ago, which turned around and said, actually, we need to get out of Iraq in order to restore our profit basis in there. And at the same time, he wants to carry out a surge into Afghanistan. I think people who are in the anti-war movement are rightly nervous and fearful of what Obama is going to do. Question is this is not the book you need to read right now about that's it. You see it everywhere on the tube, everyone's reading it. The key book to read is, and actually the other one, FDR, The First 100 Days, by Anthony J. Badger. If you have it in bookmarks, you should go and get it, because really Obama has sent it to every single member of his cabinet, he sent it to every one of his advisors, and he's sending it out to every single Democratic group in the country. Why? Because this is what he said today on the radio. Our economy has already lost nearly 2 million jobs during this recession, which is why we need an economic recovery plan that will save or create at least 2.5 million jobs over the next 2 years. We need a Green New Deal. He's beginning to take on the language of Roosevelt and beginning to move around that. And his first big test is coming very, very quick. It comes with the car bailout. The car companies want $35 billion, and everyone knows if they don't get it, if Detroit sneezes, the whole of the American economy catches pneumonia. Will he bail them out, like Paulson did the banks, or will he not? This is a huge critical test for him. What he does depends, I think, massively on what it means. Some people say, yeah, if they're done, 2 million jobs will go in America over the next year. These tests are Obama's tests, and they'll find out quick enough. And we can speculate what he'll do, maybe he'll do half and half, I don't know. Maybe he'll start to switch into green transport programs, which is what he's aiming to do in order to revitalise the economy. Not to create a new society, but in order to save capitalism. He models himself exactly. Roosevelt said the following, he goes, I never was and never will be a socialist. I am, though, a pragmatist, and I am the saviour of American capitalism. Because by switching what we do, we have the possibility of saving American capitalism by putting works into works projects and the rest of it. And I believe Obama has got serious thoughts around that. Whether we're going to not, we'll wait and see. The last point is this. It's about the hope, because it's the hope where the real possibility lies, I would argue. First of all, let me just say this. We do not live in a post-racial America. We do not live in a post-racial America. I'm sorry. When we do, instead of having 1 in 7 black males under 25 in prison, they will be at university instead of being in prison. That's when we'll have a post-racial America. You can have a black president, but you don't have a post-racial America. Absolutely horrendous form in every sort of level, whether it's education, housing, or jobs. And I say that clearly. The second point I want to say is I actually slightly agree with Noam Chomsky in the view, and I disagree with Noam Chomsky in the view. It's a very important review this month. It's got some great voices about what they think. When he talks about the Obama review, and you only have to be in America the last few months to see what it's like. I was in Washington, just a month or so ago, where everywhere you go was car boot sales for Obama, turkey shoots. I don't know what a turkey shoot is. A turkey shoot for Obama. You go out and hunt these poor big birds. You can't even fly. It just seems to be me. But anyway, turkey shoots for Obama. They have rallies for Obama, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people coming to rallies. 15,000 just to watch him at the screens and stuff like that. Fantastic network of people committing themselves to the campaign. We have to understand that Noam Chomsky says it's a stage army, it's a electoral army. Well, of course, I think when Noam Chomsky compares it to what went on in Bolivia 4 or 5 years ago, I think it's not on the same level. But I think that's not fair on many of those Obama supporters, because Obama would never have got elected in America without King and the civil rights movement, and Obama would not have got elected without the anti-war movement. It was many of those people that entered into the Obama coalition to fight for change, for progress, and for hope. The question is, what do they do? Because if they are just a stage army and retreat and allow Obama to go forward, actually he won't be able to push, even if you accepted him to change things, which I agree with Brian, I think it's very, very doubtful. I don't think one man or one woman can ever change things. It's about what goes on behind them. If you can't push him, then I think we'll have trouble. You see, I think he needs to go back to the 30s, not the way Obama wants to go back to the 30s, not about what FDR did versus anything else. You have to understand why FDR operated in the way that he did. And FDR operated in the way that he did to save capitalism, but also to try and stave off the massive pressure that developed inside the working class. You can't talk about the American working class unions right now without understanding that the sit-down strikes, the general strikes across cities, and the massive union recruitment drives in the 1930s, actually, they talk of a better, more equal society for American workers would never be the reality. They had to fight tooth and nail for their extra dollar in their back pocket. And what the unions do right now is absolutely critical. It's absolutely right that the two main union federations in America are arguing openly for Obama to open up the union floodgates and allow them to recruit people and stop the job cuts and all the rest. It's absolutely the right thing to do. You can't talk about the beginnings of the Equal Employment Acts in America in the 1940s without talking about, it didn't come from FDR, it came from Randolph and the sleeping car porters union who threatened to march on Washington 15 years before, actually 20 years before Martin Luther King's dream, threatened to march on there and demand those jobs. And you see, for me right now, I think it's a very, very simple test. It's what the movements against the war, against racism, the radicalised movements, the trade union movement does that can push Obama in a direction that can make workers not pay for the price and allow the bosses to pay. And I believe it's very, very similar to Britain in America right now. I believe there's two things in workers' heads. There's fear and there's anger. And which one is going to play out? Obama can do both, actually. Obama can actually, by winning and by beginning to put forward at least radicals, or even relatively radical, or even slim improvements for American workers, can give that confidence that can turn the fear into anger. But if he tries to turn it off, and the movement responds in a way and allows him to get away with it, then actually you can deepen that sense of fear and people don't fight back. You see, I think we have to turn around and say that's responsibility for us in Britain. We can't let off on the question of the war in Afghanistan, because every bit of pressure we put on in Britain puts the pressure on Obama. If they get away with job cuts in Britain, they get away with them in America. And we have a very simple thing. We have to fight here to keep our society, fight for better conditions there. We have to encourage our brothers and sisters in America to do the same thing. Human beings, the massive people will make history. It's the massive people who elected Obama. And it's the massive people, they act right, can begin to transform America for a better world. And actually, whatever people say about the American economy, it's much weaker than it was in the 1960s. It's still the powerhouse of the world, and the American working class has got a fine tradition. In fact, the fact they elected a black president, could we do that in Britain? All the ideas that America's just a bunch of backward rednecks is just not true anymore. It's a dignified response to McCain, fantastic response to McCain. The question is, which way will it go? And as socialists, we don't just sit on the sidelines sneering. We get stuck in because we understand what we do here impacts on America, and what American workers do in America impacts on us. That's why we're internationalists.